Everyone, and welcome back to my channel. A while ago, I made a video about Citizen Sleeper, the game, and how its systems to reflect disability, precarity, and survival under technological and economic structures that reduce people to maintenance and labor. And recently, I started playing Space Haven, and I realized that in a strange way, that game kind of feels like a continuation of that same conversation, but from the opposite direction. Because unlike most people, I do play Space Haven almost entirely in peaceful mode. So that means I do disable raids, disasters, and disable most of the constant dangers and interruptions present in the game. And what surprised me is kind of that removing those pressures didn't necessarily remove the complexity of the game. In a sense, actually, it did create more space for that to be revealed and to be accessible from the very start. And in that way, the game stops being about surviving the next catastrophe and becomes about designing systems that actually function long term. And it's interesting because then you begin to think about sustainability and about automation, about crew comfort, about exploration, efficiency, learning, expansion, etc. So it's like the priorities change entirely in the way that you play the game. And as well, have included some screenshots in this video of the game. It's of my spaceship. Um, but that made me realize something about real life, that a lot of people today are not failing because they lack skills or intelligence or capability. They are surviving inside systems that consume nearly all of their energy in order to remain stable. And as somebody who is neurodivergent and disabled, that feels very familiar in terms of managing energy, managing uncertainty, instability, trying to stay functional inside systems that often feel impossible to navigate. So when I remove those pressures in the game, like Space Haven, uh, it's there was even more space, pun intended, but there was more space to think, to learn, to create, and to become something beyond survival, essentially. And I think that that distinction matters because modern systems do personalize structural failure. If someone burns out and they cannot keep up or struggles under impossible conditions, the blame gets directed onto the individual. And many of those failures are actually systemic, such as economic instability, inaccessible labor systems, permanent precarity, isolation, administrative complexity, constant optimization for productivity without optimization for human well-being. And the systems themselves often protect against accountability. And in that way, responsibility becomes abstract, decisions become hidden behind institutions, policies, algorithms, you name it, departments, automated systems, anonymous structures, etc. So the systems act upon people constantly, but they become almost impossible to meaningfully confront. And meanwhile, individuals are expected to solve increasingly systemic problems entirely on their own, to build support systems from nothing, to self-optimize endlessly, to automate themselves into survival in conditions that were never designed for human flourishing in the first place. And this is exactly where I think games like Citizen Sleeper and now Space Haven become unintentionally revealing because colony simulators make systems very visible. you can actually see exactly what happens when a structure is overloaded. You can see bottlenecks, resource collapse, crew exhaustion, uh, cascading failures, maintenance spirals, etc. And you can see other things, such as when constant catastrophe is removed, the crew does not become less productive. They become more capable because conditions have changed. And I think that this is very revealing about our reality as well as humans, that harmful systems are becoming more efficient. Um, but it doesn't mean that they are becoming more humane, in the same sense that optimization alone is not transformation. And if a system is fundamentally exploitative, optimizing often just makes exploitation more scalable and more invisible as well. And I kind of think about that a lot, especially now when much of the modern life feels dominated by survival pressure. And even in technology and software engineering, which is the field that I come from, we constantly think and talk about optimization and automation and scalability, um, efficiency, etc. But it's important to note that efficiency towards what exactly? Because systems always have encoded priorities. And if those priorities are built around endless extraction, around instability, survival pressure, then eventually human beings begin shrinking around those limitations, and people stop being able to imagine a future. They stop creating, they stop exploring, they stop growing, not because they're incapable, but because survival consumes all available bandwidth that they have. And I think this is also why space colony games feel, at least to me, emotionally significant. They expose very visibly something unavoidable. There is no escaping a broken system simply by moving somewhere else. So, for example, I cannot build a functioning civilization on another planet while recreating the same structures that caused the collapse in the first place. And in games like Space Haven, you can postpone consequences for a while, still depending on your game customization and settings. But eventually, everything that's unresolved catches up to the system. And I think humanity works in a very similar way. There is no future on another planet if we cannot create systems that function sustainably on this one. Um, and again, that's not meant to be a doom talk or anything like that. But what I'm implying is that because systems are based entirely on survival pressure, eventually that consumes the very people that they are meant to sustain. And I think that's why opting for peaceful mode kind of revealed that much faster. Um, It definitely did not remove challenge. The game is still very much so challenging in some ways. Um, but it rather allowed me, I think, to imagine what human beings can become when they're not trapped in permanent crisis. And functioning, system does not eliminate effort or challenge. Instead, it creates conditions where effort can lead to growth instead of exhaustion and eventual collapse. And I think that's the real difference. It's not necessarily survival versus comfort. It's more so survival versus possibility. So thank you so much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed that, and I hope that you enjoyed the game as well if you've ever played it. It's a very interesting one, and for sure, very diverse in terms of the way that it can be played. So thank you again. Take care and bye for now.